Welcome, everyone, to the Best of Markham podcast, brought to you by me, Igor Klibanov from FitnessSolutionsPlus.ca, your personal trainers for chronic conditions. Here with me today is Councillor Keith Irish. He is the Ward 1 counselor in Markham. Keith, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, my pleasure, Igor. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Well, I've lived in Thornhill for almost 40 years. It's a little surprises me every time I have to say that. It doesn't seem that long, but time has passed quickly. And what I've always liked about Thornhill is it has a very strong sense of community. And I came into municipal politics because I felt, quite honestly, I had something to contribute. I had my own business for a number of years, for over 30 years, and I volunteered in the community over all those years in various capacities, from, you know, helping out with the Historical Society to sitting on the Thornhill Secondary School Parent Council where my sons attended. I
Hmm.
was also elected when, believe it or not, when I was 26 years old. I was elected as the public school trustee for
Yeah.
representing the area as well. So I have very deep roots in Thornhill, and I love it. I love everything about it.
Yeah. I even used to live in Thornhill on Leslie Highway 7 for about 6 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Great community.
Well,
Absolutely.
I don't like it when people say they used to live in Thornhill. I why did you leave? I guess you're the one asking the question, so maybe I'm
Well,
stepping out here, but
so yeah, I lived on Leslie Highway 7. It was a one-bedroom apartment. Then I got a girlfriend. We moved in together. One bedroom wasn't enough. Now she's my wife. We moved to Leslie and Shepherd, and now we bought a house just recently, and now I live in Unionville.
oh, congratulations.
So still
Unionville
not, yeah. So still
is a
not far,
beautiful.
not far from Thornhill anyway.
No, not at all. Not at all. At least you're in the same city.
Yeah, exactly. Still in Markham.
Yeah.
And how'd you end up becoming a counselor?
Well, it's not something that I grew up thinking one day I'd like to be. Oddly enough, though, I didn't know much about Markham when I was quite young and in elementary school. In fact, one of my first introductions, believe it or not, was my grade eight teacher was a
Hmm.
resident of Markham, and that kind of put it on the map for me. I grew up in Don Mills
Yeah.
and didn't, unless my parents took me someplace for hockey, I didn't have much of an appreciation for the geography.
Right.
Um, but what happened was that I became increasingly involved in the community, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. And over the years, I paid a fair bit of attention, I think, to what was happening locally. And I realized, I think that like a lot of people, municipal government has an enormous impact on people's lives.
Yeah.
And arguably the most direct impact of any level of government, quite honestly. And I put my name forward 8 years ago because I thought I could make a difference. So that really was the beginning of it. I haven't regretted a single day since then. I do enjoy it. I'm intellectually challenged as well. And of course, with my deep roots in Thornhill and my love of the community and the people and all that it has to offer, it's wonderful to be able to serve. One of the things, though, that I've discovered that once you're the counselor is you never really stop being the counselor. In fact,
Yeah.
I got some wonderful advice from at the time the outgoing member of parliament was Peter Kent, and he told me, he said, "You're never not the counselor. You're never not in out of the spotlight in any way." And quite
Hmm.
honestly, there are times, more frequently than I care to admit, that I may be at the grocery store on a Saturday morning and I'll get stopped and asked a question about something
Right.
that's happening in the community. So
Yeah, you're always on. It's
yeah,
I mean, I'm a business owner, you're a former business owner. You know that in business it never stops.
no,
And I guess that this prepared you well for local politics.
yeah. So I'm a much better driver, safer driver than I used to be. You never know. I don't speed. I obey everything. I don't want you to think I was, or your listeners to think I was something of a renegade. I wasn't. But you're more mindful of the office that you hold, and you have to be respectful of everything. Not that I was not a law-abiding citizen all these
Right.
years, but you know what I mean. You got to be extra
Yeah.
careful and set a good example for people.
Yeah, absolutely. They look up to you. And since most people don't know, what does the counselor do? What does your day-to-day entail?
Yeah, it's I'll sort of answer that one this way. Didn't take me very long once I was in office to be somewhat surprised at some of the things that people reach out to their counselors for.
Hmm.
It was something that never, ever really occurred to me. And again, being civic minded, being involved, having been on the school board, I was still quite amazed that because I never would have thought for some of the issues that people reach out to me about, I never would have even considered reaching out to any of my predecessors. So we're responsible for a fair bit. And I think a lot of people think that members of council, attending meetings and voting on issues is pretty much all it's about, but it's not. It's
Hmm.
actually a small part of it. I like to tell a bit of a funny story because it's not happened just once, but truly in 8 years, it's happened four times from
Right.
four different people where I've been contacted and they've explained to me that they're holding an event at their home on any given weekend, maybe, an outdoor wedding or an anniversary party or a garden party of some kind. And they asked me if I would be kind enough to have the airplane traffic over Thornhill that's traveling to Pearson redirected away from Thornhill. And I mean, it's just amazing what kind of power or responsibility people think I have,
Right.
and I don't. And
They
I
hold you
really,
in very high regard.
yeah, I suppose, so it's kind of humorous and, a little unsettling too, at the same time. But, in addition to what I've just described, um, there's a lot of policy work, clearly. We're reading staff reports, meeting with the city staff, developers, other stakeholders, members of the community groups, and all of that. And ultimately, a counselor needs to advocate strongly for what's in the best interest of the people that they represent and never lose sight of the people who sent us
Yeah.
to City Hall. So, I guess to sum up, I'd say, I'm something as, a legislator,
Mhm.
um, an advocate, as I mentioned, a problem solver, and quite honestly, at times, a customer service representative
Right.
to
So
help people navigate the bureaucracy.
yeah. So besides, besides legislation, besides sitting on meetings and voting on bills, you said that's a small part of what you do. What about the rest of it? When you say customer service, what else does that entail?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the last piece?
When you say customer service, what does that entail?
Well, first and foremost, you need to be responsive to people who reach out to you, and I am. It's sort of a point of pride. I
I
mean,
can I can attest to that.
yeah, thank you. Well, when you have your own business, you realize, you live and die by your customers. You know, to the extent that it's a smooth correlation. I mean, the people I represent are my customers.
Yeah.
They pay property taxes, they live in the community, they contribute, they raise families, and it's important that they know that their counselor is responsive. So first and foremost, I try to be as responsive as I possibly can, and I do answer everyone back. But we have a municipality does control an incredible amount. Um, we've got responsibilities for roads and parks and recreation planning, development, water, waste, transit, local infrastructure, and all kinds of things. So it's important that and believe it or not, people it covers the whole gamut in terms of some of the issues that people will reach out to me about. But what really resonated for me in my first campaign in 2018 was, knocking on thousands of doors across the ward. People had all kinds of issues.
Hmm.
And, to you and I, they range from being rather minor to, even more significant, but it doesn't matter. If it's important to the person, and certainly important enough for them to want to share it with me
Hmm.
during a campaign and after I was elected, then it's important for me too. And I
Right.
put myself in their shoes and I think, what would I want my counselor or my city to do on my behalf to help
Right.
resolve this issue? So that informs me every single day.
Right. What are the most common issues that people reach out to you for?
Um, you know, I'd say probably traffic congestion.
Mm. Yep.
That most certainly, and we've got a lot of it. I mean, Thornhill. I joke at council sometimes, and most certainly with the mayor, that the Thornhill, the way the map is drawn for Markham borders, my ward borders four municipalities.
Hmm.
So it borders Toronto, Vaughan, Richmond Hill, and Markham,
Yeah, yeah,
even though we're part of Markham,
yeah.
but we're a bit of an appendage from Markham. So, you know, that's clearly an important issue because, residents don't necessarily pay attention to municipal borders.
Hmm.
And with the subway extension that's coming, it's a big issue for us because it's driving a lot of the intensification and redevelopment.
Right.
So, it's a concern for all of us that we want to preserve as best we can the quality of life we have, knowing too that other levels of government are insisting that we intensify in order to support the subway extension. So,
Right.
congestion, traffic related, new development, most certainly. And then the rest of it is sort of I'll say, I don't mean it this way entirely because they're all important issues, but run of the mill kind of municipal issues like, waste pickup, grass cutting of public boulevards, tree
Right.
maintenance, all of those kinds of issues.
You got it. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And what is it that makes Thornhill unique? I mean, I was a resident there for 6 years and I loved it. But you've been a counselor for 8 years. So
Well,
what makes Thornhill unique?
maybe that's a better question for you to fill out a little bit more. But no, I'm kidding. Thornhill, and I think in part because of what I was just saying, its geography is somewhat unique.
Yeah.
We have an orientation, quite honestly, an orientation more south to Toronto
Hmm.
than we do perhaps to other more what I would characterize as remote parts of Markham.
Yeah.
So it's well, I guess, to joke, they don't number the wards haphazardly. It's Ward One. It's one of the
Right.
oldest parts, one of the oldest.
1794. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of the oldest parts of Markham. But it is unique because I think it has a genuine sense of place, a real community.
Yeah.
For me, I've always been a booster. I've always been proud that I live in Thornhill.
Yeah.
I've always been proud of the name, its history, and everything that it has to offer, the quality of its schools, its safe streets, all of those kinds of things. But, it's not just a collection of different neighborhoods. It is
Yeah.
that history I mentioned, established neighborhoods, a lot of mature trees, the highest percentage of seniors
Hmm.
than anywhere else in the city. The most sidewalks, believe it or not, which I hear a lot about when it snows and they need to be cleared because we got a lot of people that
Yep.
are active and go out for exercise. But at the same time, too, we've got a lot of ravines and parks and just wonderful natural spaces too that make it really kind of unique. And the people, there's a lot of community spirit. People really do genuinely care about their neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and they volunteer, they organize, they show up at events, and I think collectively it's all of that that really makes it pretty special.
Yeah, yeah. I remember last year, I think back in September, when the Thornhill Community Center had its 50th anniversary. I attended, absolutely,
Hmm.
and the amount of people that actually attended that was overwhelming. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The highest concentration of seniors. Although I also saw young families with babies and toddlers. Yeah, it's spanned the gamut.
Yeah, the area, like most areas in any city, anywhere really, they go through a bit of a renaissance where, one generation is moving out or downsizing, and newer and younger families are coming in, and
Yeah,
that's a source of vitality. And I was at that event too. And within the last year, quite honestly, we've celebrated a number of 50th anniversaries. That one, the community center was one, St. Michael's Catholic Academy
yep,
was another, St. Robert Catholic High School
yep.
was
A lot of
another. So
a lot of my friends went to St. Rob's.
yeah, it's a wonderful school. So,
Yeah,
there is a certain sense of history and longevity to all of it too.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My wife runs a high school tutoring business, and she loves kids from St. Rob's because they are so academically rigorous.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not to shortchange the other schools
No,
either.
no, no, exactly. There's many good ones, but I think this one's consistently top five in all of Ontario, not just Markham.
Is it? Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
surprised by that. It is a wonderful institution. It really is. And they've been fortunate too to have such high caliber uh, administration, high caliber teachers and staff. It really
yeah,
is. It's a great,
absolutely,
great
absolutely.
community. Yeah.
Now, what are some hidden gems that more people should know about?
Well, I don't know if this is so much of a hidden gem, but I don't want to be remiss and not mention it. And clearly, that's the Heinzman House. I
Yeah.
mean that's first and foremost for me. That's an obvious one. It's a great heritage treasure in the community. I've served on the board since well before I was elected,
Hmm.
but so I've been on the board since early 2017. And a bit of a story behind that, if I may, just quickly.
Sure.
Uh, Back, it would have been, I guess, the 1960s when that area, which is now the Royal Orchard community, had been purchased by a developer to build homes. Of course, the Heinzman House was one of the properties that was purchased, and it was actually slated for demolition.
Mm.
And, and this speaks to the community spirit and the people that were in that community at that time. They banded together and they saved it from the wrecking ball. And we've all obviously benefited greatly from it. And it's been owned by the city of Markham now. It's used essentially as a community center, as a venue, as a meeting place for
Yep.
community events ever since. So that's one. But somewhat not so recent in terms of its longevity because it's been around since the 1930s, but more recent, most certainly, because I came up with the idea of purchasing it on
Hmm.
behalf of the city and for the community, and that's the Shouldice property.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
So
World renowned.
absolutely. So it's actually, I'm always precise when I talk about this. Every square inch of it. It's a 22.4 acre site,
Yeah.
and a developer bought it and had a proposal for 5 condominium towers.
No.
And yeah, yeah. And when in my first term of office, shortly after I was elected, it all started to happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, because there is something else I want to tell you about that's interesting about that property for people that are unaware.
Yeah.
Long story short is I came up with the idea to buy it from the developer, and we
Right.
did. So it's
Good.
now owned by the city of Markham, and it'll be protected against development in perpetuity.
Oh.
It's essentially a public park. The hospital is still operating under a lease arrangement that the city inherited. But I want to just tell you a little bit about the background of it. It's really steeped in history.
Yeah.
In the mid 1940s, 30s, a gentleman by the name of George McCullough, he purchased 200 acres of land that's now the Bayview John area,
Yeah.
that sort of Thornhill center.
Yeah.
And he built that home for him and his family soon after. It cost, in 1930 dollars, it cost $500,000 to build.
Oh.
And that's equivalent to $11 million today.
Yeah.
Um, but what's interesting about George McCullough is that obviously he had means in order to buy the land and build a house of that size and expanse.
Hmm.
He was a wealthy Toronto financier, but um, he was also an influential, very influential newspaper owner. And
Right.
he was the one that created the Globe and Mail. He merged
Oh.
two newspapers. One was liberal,
Yeah.
sort of liberal party aligned, called the Globe, and the conservative one was called the Mail and Empire. And he
Hmm.
put the two of them together in 1936. So
Yeah.
his legacy, in many ways, is not just the home and the property,
Yeah.
but the Globe and Mail newspaper.
Oh, how interesting. Huh.
Yeah. And
Never
then
knew
in
that.
addition, in addition to that, Igor, I'd say, some of the other hidden gems are quite honestly some of the smaller parks and natural areas that we have spread out across Ward 1, from Pomona Mills to German Mills. There's some wonderful examples of nature and walking paths that are geared to pedestrians. It's
Yep.
just it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not everybody appreciates those, of course. I find, there's pockets of Thornhill you kind of become comfortable within your immediate neighborhood. And two,
Yeah.
anybody who's passing through Thornhill probably doesn't have any sort of knowledge of any of the hidden gems. And it's really worth taking a look.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the ones you just mentioned are my old jogging trails.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
what's improved the most over the last few years?
Well, I think that as a city, and in Thornhill in particular, I think we've become much more um, deliberate and focused on infrastructure and quality of life.
Hmm.
And we've put. I'd like to think, all modesty aside, I'd like to think that in the time I've been in office, we've put greater attention on our roads, traffic safety, the parks, the Shouldice property being a
Yep.
significant achievement, some environmental initiatives, and then maintaining. the infrastructure that we have. It is an older community and, relative to some other parts of Markham, and the infrastructure is showing it. So we've made nearly $40 million of investments in
Yeah.
infrastructure, a lot that people don't see because it's underground. They see it when we're ripping up the road in order to
Yeah.
replace, the infrastructure. But we've really focused, I think, a lot on on improving that for Thornhill, for current residents and future generations.
Yeah.
Um, so we've done a fair bit of that. The other is because of our geographic proximity and because of the subway and associated construction too, we're looking very seriously at improving traffic around and out of some of our neighborhoods. We don't want construction on Yonge Street
Yeah.
or Steeles to necessarily mean that people are going to find cut throughs through our established neighborhoods and
Hmm.
kind of turn our local roads into raceways. So we're working on improving that too.
Yeah, yeah, that actually kind of answers my next question of what problems have been the hardest to solve. Sounds like that might be one of them.
Well, it is. I mean, the province and the region of York both have essentially dictated intensification along the Yonge corridor in support of the subway. So with that, we're seeing, parcels of land all the way along Yonge Street on both sides, the Vaughan side and the Markham side, purchased for redevelopment. And it's got to be appropriate. The infrastructure has to support it.
Hmm.
It's got to keep pace with it. And existing residents, their quality of life, as I mentioned, their, sense of community has to be maintained as well. So,
Yeah,
those are some of the issues that, are hardest to resolve because you got the province on one hand with a rather heavy hand, I'll
yeah,
confess, imposing a lot of this change upon us. And then what about those that are, you know, existing residents and have been for decades and, are loyal to the community and the city and want to maintain it to the extent that we can within reason.
yeah,
So
yeah. Growing
they're,
pains.
they're hard, they're hard, they're challenges, most certainly.
Yeah, yeah, no question about it. Speaking of challenges, and this is largely a podcast about small business and entrepreneurship.
Sure.
So, what are
Yeah.
some of the biggest challenges facing small businesses in Thornhill?
Well, I don't know truly, an answer to this is particularly unique to Thornhill, but
Hmm.
it's the bane of the existence of a lot of small businesses, and that
Hmm.
obviously is the rents,
Yeah.
the cost of rent, the labor, insurance, utilities, the materials that they need to buy. Everything
Hmm.
is that much more expensive. I'm not saying anything that you or your viewers certainly wouldn't be aware of.
Right.
Um, I think another challenge clearly is that when I talk about sense of community and quality of life, local businesses are an integral part of all of that. I mean, we like as residents to be able to shop locally. It's nice to be able to not have to get into a car and have a
Yes.
meal or see a dentist or a lawyer or
Hmm.
shop for groceries and that kind of thing. So it's getting people to shop locally and making sure that we as a city make it as stress free, I'll put it that way, for local
Yeah.
businesses to establish themselves and succeed. That's an important part of it. And a healthy business community isn't just about economics. As I mentioned, it contributes to the character of the neighborhood. It gives people a sense of place and a place to meet, and it creates local jobs, and it makes a community feel alive
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
time. So it's facilitating that, it's encouraging that, it's helping local businesses succeed is also a part of my responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, sounds yeah, yeah, exactly. There are lots of great stuff going on to help local businesses.
Yeah,
Um, I work at a gym called Advantage for Athletes, and we've had a number of times where Mayor's Graffiti showed up to support new initiatives going in the gym.
yeah.
So absolutely. Now, what community events should people know about?
Well, we host a lot in the community. Unfortunately, we had for 40 years, we had a Thornhill Village Festival, the third Saturday in every September. And in fact, that was my wife and I, that was the very first thing when we moved within months of moving to Thornhill
Yeah.
in the late 80s, we got involved with. But for a number of different reasons, it had to end. It ended in 2019. Now, I don't
Hmm.
want to sort of confine my answer to that, but it was a wonderful sense of bringing everyone together
Yeah.
and a real great opportunity. In addition to that, though, now I got to go back to the Heinzman House. It's, as I mentioned, owned and operated by the city of Markham, but it's managed by a volunteer board of community members. And they do
Mhm.
an absolutely wonderful job of hosting events throughout the year. So there's some real standouts. In April, there's the annual art show and sale.
Yeah.
Um, in the in in October, obviously on Halloween,
Yeah.
they turn it into a scary house and they hand out candy and everything. It's also
Yeah.
featured as one of the great events across the city for Doors Open.
Yeah.
And then in November, there's a craft show and sale as well. And a lot of local artisans have an opportunity to display their wares, and people can do their early holiday shopping. So it's really a focal point for those kinds of things. It's just a great event that brings everyone together.
Oh yeah. So anybody watching this episode, check out those events in the Heisman House. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so amazing hidden gem. Now, as a counselor and somebody who's lived here for almost 40 years, a few rapid fire questions about your favorite places in Thornhill. So
Sure.
I know it's hard to pick one, but what's your favorite restaurant in Thornhill?
It is hard to pick
Yeah.
one, but I do have one, and that would be Santorini's
Oh yeah, absolutely. We took our
at
mother-in-law there
Broadway.
from yeah, we took our
Yeah,
mother-in-law there. Sorry, my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, there on her birthday about 2 years ago.
yeah, yeah. No,
Great.
it's a wonderful spot. I've been going there, well, since I've been in Thornhill. I remember having dinner there on New Year's Eve, 1999.
Yeah.
It's a real standout. So that's my favorite.
Yes. Good. Great choice.
Yeah.
What's your favorite coffee shop in Thornhill?
I think Ramona's Cafe.
Yep.
Now,
Another good one.
everyone knows it as the Longos Plaza
Yep.
at Bayview and Laura Leaf. There's a Ramona's sort of restaurant
Yep.
proper, and then there was a Starbucks, and they took over the Starbucks, and it's Ramona's Cafe, and it's great coffee, very healthy
Yes.
menu, and
If
I,
you
I'm
want it
glad.
to be. They
Yeah,
also
and
have
well,
less healthy items, which are
yeah,
delicious.
well, not there, not in the cafe. The cafe is a much, it's sort of um, healthier menu than perhaps some that's in the restaurant proper.
Yeah.
But they do have a lot of pastries. To your point, there's in the cafe. It's hard to avoid those sometimes, but Ramona's Cafe is the
Yeah.
best.
My wife and I have breakfast there occasionally.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you already mentioned it. Hidden Gems, an annual event. So I guess that's the Heitzman House.
Well,
And
I
yeah,
did, but I just want to squeeze in too a hidden gem that a
yeah.
lot of people, and I featured it on one of my holiday cards a few years ago that I send out to residents every December, and that is the German Mills Community Center at
Okay.
85 German Mills Road. It is a one-room schoolhouse that's been beautifully preserved and is available for use by the community. So that's a hidden gem,
Okay.
and
Thank you for the tip.
That's Leslie and John Street area.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I worked at Leslie and John for about a year in the before the plaza was torn down in Snap
Right.
Fitness.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
definitely hidden because I never heard about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's right near there, 85 German Mills Road. It's
Interesting.
worth a visit.
Perfect. Thank you for the tip. And Keith,
Okay,
thank you so much for doing this podcast. Very insightful. Lots of hidden gems, things I've never heard about, even though I've been living here or near here for a very long time. So I really appreciate it.
you're welcome. I really appreciate the opportunity and best of luck to you and your business as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, all right.